Hello and welcome to another edition of the MTDCNC podcast. This one is being filmed at DMG MORI UK's headquarters in the UK here in Coventry. The subject of this podcast is this fabulous machine behind us, which is the NMV 3000. Now we're going to be talking in detail about this machine and lots more. If you are listening to this, of course, you can watch it too by visiting our YouTube channel. I'm going to introduce the first three guests to this podcast. In fact, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. But later on, we'll also be joined by Charley, Lucas, and also Jay Heighton. So to start with, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Perhaps you could introduce yourself. We'll start with yourself, Steve.
Yeah, welcome, Paul. Thank you for coming down to see us again and giving the opportunity for our audience to look at this superb machine that we got. My name is Steve Fenn. I'm the Managing Director here, responsible for the sales and service of all of our products within the portfolio, which is very extensive, as you know, and hopefully some of our listeners know. I'm looking forward to a good discussion on this machine and the reasons why it can benefit UK manufacturing.
There is so much to discuss. Honestly, you really need to listen to the whole of this podcast. In the preparation for it, there is so many topics that are really hot topics at the moment. Kevin, introduce yourself. Good to see you.
Hi, Paul. Yes, my name's Kevin Buck. I'm the technical project specialist here at DMG MORI UK. So my main remit really is working with the key accounts of the UK, of which we have quite a number.
Okay, good stuff. And then James.
Hey Paul, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Introduce yourself for our audience.
Hi, I'm James Clist. I work with DMG MORI Finance here in the UK. I'm supporting UK customers purchasing DMG MORI machines. It really is as simple as that.
It's an easy job for you, isn't it?
It's a doddle, yes.
Okay, now coming up, we're going to be talking about the NMV 3000 that's here in stock. Now, in fact, there's two of these machines. So, of course, if you are interested in what we discussed today and you want to see it in action, you can come to DMG MORI's headquarters here in Coventry and then, of course, talk to them about potentially owning one of these. We'll be talking about lights out machining and automation. Importantly, the challenges and the considerations. We'll talk about cost and financing and how affordable are these machines and how DMG MORI can help you soften and de-risk purchases, which I know is a pretty hot topic for you guys and has been for over recent years. We'll also look at why this machine is so popular. And some might say, and it was talked about in the preparation, that this is one of DMG MORI's best kept secrets. So we'll explore that too. We'll look in depth at the technology on the machine with Kevin, who I know is really looking forward to getting his teeth stuck into that. But most of all, this podcast is aimed at really highlighting how the technologies like this can solve manufacturing problems. And I think that's a big thing for me. It's great talking about the kit, guys. It's great talking about what products you have in the range, but it's really about finding out what problems manufacturers have, or maybe they don't even know they've got, that this type of kit could solve. And if all of that's of interest to you, like I said, you can, of course, come here to DMG MORI in Coventry to see this machine in action. So before we really get going and get into the nitty gritty, I thought it would be good maybe for the three of you just to give us a sentence on what you would like to say about the NMV 3000 and what's the biggest message you'd like to get across in this podcast before we really get going. And if we could maybe start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I think that UK manufacturing faces some real challenges today, as the rest of the world do, and the rest of the world are working hard to overcome those challenges. So it is kind of my responsibility to make sure I support our customers and our prospects in the right way and give them the equipment that's going to make them, very efficient from a worldwide point of view. And I think the thing that comes out the most with the NMV is the complexity of the machine. It's a very well-built machine, which Kevin will go into the details of. But it also gives huge flexibility to the customer. It gives you that flexibility to manufacture in an unattended approach. And people should be using that lights out situation today.
Well, I'm going to come back to you on that in a minute because I know it's a really big topic for you and for the company in general. Kevin, the sentence that you would like, or a sentence that you'd like to say that would really cover off, and perhaps it's the perfect time now for you to just describe what the NMV is and what you would like to talk about in this podcast.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to highlight the differences of the NMV from a lot of other machines that there are available around the world, and some of the technologies that the NMV brings to the end user. And probably one of the biggest points it brings is it's a very extremely rigid machine in its construction. It's a bridge type machine tool, so it's not a C-shaped form. I think you probably know the differences between C-shapes. So a bridge is particularly strong. All of the axes on this machine are at the top of the machine. So you've got X, Y, Z at the top, and then you've got your B and your C axis in the table. So the axes at the top of the machine are also DCG driven. We'll go into the aspects of that later, I hope. The spindle is held within that bridge system on an octagonal ram, which is particularly rigid, and hopefully we'll touch on that a little bit later. And also the pallet, if you do take the pallet version machine, there's a table version as well, but this is the pallet machine, and the pallet's connection to the machine tool is particularly rigid. Many of these aspects of the machine pool really add up to a rigid, highly performing, reliable machine tool that delivers just really tool life I haven't seen on many machine tools.
You took all my points off my cards, would you believe? But what a fantastic description. I mean, and to add to that, for those that aren't watching and are listening, this is a 5-axis machine with a 34 pallet station on it, of which of those things we'll go into a bit more detail. James, from your perspective, it's always interesting to have you on our conversations, our videos and our podcast, because your angle is very much affordability, isn't it? It's about the companies being able to value their return on investment and how they can actually initially get this machine on the deck. So what's the kind of message you'll be looking to get across?
I think, Paul, the point here is that any company that invests in a machine tool, they do so to make money. So there's absolutely no point in selling a machine tool which is not suitable for the company, which is what DMG MORI will not do. I gave some thought before our podcast today and looked at some of the customers that we've financed these machines for. It's a real broad spectrum, but the one thing that is apparent, the machines have gone in, they've run with automation, lights out, and they've made money for the customer. That's my goal.
And I think if we can throughout this podcast get people to think, actually, do you know what, this is within my reach and it's something that I should be looking at, that will be deemed a success.
Indeed, because a lot of those customers, you would maybe look at the headline price of this machine and they would initially balk and say, no, that's not right for us. But when the technical and the commercial are presented side by side, it's become a no-brainer.
Okay, and that's going to be coming up later in this podcast. Keep your powder dry on that one, James, because I know we've got some facts and figures that we'll be able to demonstrate. Steve, we were talking earlier, one of the points that you made about the machine, which I found really interesting, was you were talking about, and this is very broad, and this is why I like being able to do podcasts like this, because we don't have to rush through it. We can perfectly describe and talk about the reasons why and where this machine fits. And you talked about UK manufacturing in general and the fact that this is a machine that is ideally suited to really demanding work. Why is that important, and why did you mention that?
Well, I think demanding work is something that the UK do. I mean, we've got some fabulous SMEs, some fabulous OEMs that do some very complex low volume, high variety type applications of work. Gone are the days when we're going to do cheap, castings and bash them out with a few holes in. That is a very difficult commercial aspect to keep going in a company, because, if you don't utilise your spare time, and machines like this will give you that, then you're going to be eaten up by the low cost economy. It's as simple as that. And the UK is not a low-cost economy. unfortunately.
And do you see that, James, as well? I mean, is that something that you go in to companies and see when they're looking to buy these machines? It's because the quality of the work that they're doing is for industries that they really, really need something that's going to stand out and make them better than their competition potentially. And
I think we need to appreciate that certainly 2 companies, 3 companies that spring to mind are making critical aerospace components, and there is no margin for error. And also because of the sheer cost of the material, which again we know at the moment costs are rising, a very, very accurate machine tool, a very reliable machine tool, which Kevin will lead on to, reduces the amount of scrap of material. That's important at the moment.
Okay, Kevin, let's do some of this then. Let's talk about this machine in detail. You've alluded to yourself, and lots will know there's lots of pallet machines in the marketplace. There's lots of 5-axis technology. When you're in a meeting and you're in a sales call or you're looking at a project, what's your angles? What are you looking to extract from the customer so that you can solve and you think this machine may solve better than potentially others?
Okay, well, we're normally just trying to absorb what range of parts they're looking to produce and try and look at an angle that will deliver the cost-effective solution for them. And this machine particularly lends itself to high surface finish parts, high definition contoured parts. Difficult materials are an ideal area that this machine needs to operate in. And if you want to make good money in the difficult materials, then the NMV for me particularly lends itself to that because of the features within the machine. You know, the box construction, the twin ball screw for the DCG drive system, the octagonal ram, the pallet system. It's just one of the most rigid machine tools you could apply to the component. And then you get accurate parts, you get parts right first time, and you get the surface finish and you get the tolerances.
Tell me about this octagonal ram that you talk about. You've also got ceramic pads, internal cooling, twin ball screws. All of these things, what are they, and what do they give someone that purchases this machine? What's their comfort from knowing this?
Okay, then most machine tools in the market, and some of the machine tools that we offer, the spindle in the machine is held on roller guides, which are okay to a certain respect. But if you want the ultimate in solidity and rigidity, then you look for solid guideways. And the way that Mori have designed this machine is particularly clever. We call it the octagonal ram. So therefore you've got 4 surfaces you can look at in the ram of the machine, and the ram is supported 360 degrees around. So the ram is supported then by these ceramic pads. The ram is precision scraped, so you've got a field of oil there between the ceramic pads and the ram. So it's just held in the highest rigidity. But it does more than that, really. Because it's an octagonal ram, so you've got 360 degrees of contact all the way around. You get thermal aspects on any machine. You know, the spindle's getting warm as it's working hard, and you will work it hard on this machine. As that happens, things start to expand. But if you have guideways that are contacting the ram in 360 degrees positions, then the spindle centerline pull will not move. As the machine breathes through its temperature, as its temperature rises, it just expands in both the forward and reverse direction and the left and the right direction. So the beauty is the spindle is going to stay where you think it should be, where the measuring system knows it to be, throughout the working period of the machine.
Yeah, and these are some of the points that we will come on to, probably talk into more detail about the fact that these solve some of the challenges that automation brings. And on that point, I wanted to maybe talk to you all, and firstly you, Steve, about automation in general here in this country, because this is what we're looking at here. We've got 34 pallets on this machine, and we're looking at lights out running. We are still a market that isn't as good as a lot of our overseas partners or non-partners, however you want to term them, but we are getting better. But how important is it now for people to start going, okay, I know I can use this machine as a 5-axis on its own, but I don't really need the pallet system. Why do they? What is automation going to give them?
There's a lot of benefits to the pallet system. The first thing is, lots of customers have repeat jobs coming up every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You can just leave it in their set. You can leave the tools in their set. You pull one in, the machine is, as Kevin's described, thermally very accurate, very stable. You pull a job in on a Monday, you do a one-off, you invoice it, you get your money in. Yeah, this is what guys are really interested in. This is what a machine tool is bought for. It's actually bought for invoicing. Not because people like the colour of it or love the colour of my eyes. It's there to actually do a job for the company. And from that point of view, it allows them then to pick the job up again 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and do another one. So it doesn't mean that this has to be high volume. This is very, very adaptable to high variety. And we touched on it earlier, power is a cost. Energy is a huge worldwide issue. And we all know that energy or power is cheaper at night. So why not run the machine at night? Where the machine's very, very capable with sister tooling. It doesn't have to be set up to be running high volume. It can be doing, 5 or 6 different jobs all the way through its process. And, at the end of the day, we don't need a man or a woman, person, to stand there and watch this machine perform. We can leave it running on its own. It is capable of running on its own. And we've got many, many applications in the UK where it is. So,
how many have you turned? How many have gone, do you know what, that's not, and this would be a good question for James as well shortly, but how many have gone, it's not for me, I don't need that level of automation. I've only got 2 offs, 3 offs. It's going to be difficult to set, it's going to be difficult to operate. What problems headaches is it going to give me? How many of those have you had that have ended up walking out with something similar to this?
Well, if you go back to the very part of that question, yes, we've had a lot of people that walked in and went, that's not for me, that's not for us, and that's fine. And we're not going to push it down somebody's neck. But we've also had people walk in and went, really? It can do this and it can do that and it can solve my problem here and solve that problem, and they've bought. And those people that have bought have generally gone on to buy a second or a third or even a 4th machine. So there are the people that have got vision, that understand really where their business has got to be. We can commercially help the customer move along those lines, which James will go through. So there is a very, very good argument to go down this route. It's not going to be for everybody, but the ones that do go through it, I know are earning good money.
Well, I'll ask you this, Kevin. I think we'll come on to the finance bit shortly, James, because it's really important. But Kevin, who are those people? Steve mentions that it's not for everyone. We'll talk about who it is for, but who do you think it isn't for?
Well, if you're a company that's producing work that's fairly open tolerance work, that's fairly what we would call simplistic work, you don't really buy an NMV for that. But that's fine, because as a DMG MORI company, where your other products we would move you towards. So the beauty is with dealing with DMG MORI, really, as a company, is that we can pick the right machine tool for the application pool. We're not worried about losing a sale because we can follow the customer's needs to wherever he needs to be. Even from an entry-level machine. I know we're not here to discuss the M1 type of machine today, but if that's the right application for them, that's what we would advise them to do.
Okay, so it's a fairly limited audience that it's not for then. It's a bigger audience that it could be for. Let me suggest here, because I go into a lot of machine shops and we do at MTDCNC where they've got lots and lots of spindles, taking up lots and lots of floor space. They're making lots and lots of different components out of lots of different materials, but generally they are tight tolerance because most parts in industry are. So it would be suitable for companies like that then, wouldn't it? It could reduce...
Absolutely. Let me just tell you one other scenario they're making lots of, or they're not making lots of, aren't they? They're not. They're taking job from one machine to another, to another, to another. They've got excessive tool life. They've got geometric tolerance problems, So the machine is suitable for more than not, if you like. So you're 100% right. why shouldn't they? And I think it comes down to the foresight of those owners. That some people walk in here. We've had one guy over in Northern Ireland was very sceptical, done things very traditionally on horizontal and mill turn type applications, has now invested in one of these. He said, I just need to get the second one in. It is the machine in the shop that is eating all my work, making all my money. You know, so it takes away a lot of headaches, a lot of problems that we all know about, that all these guys know about. And sometimes it's very difficult to change the mindset. You know, and as Kevin says, sometimes we then have to say, okay, well, you prefer this and this, but automation is key.
There are other reasons you would take an NMV as well, Paul. Some people want an easier time in their workshop. You know, they want to be able to take a job to a machine and know that there's not a lot of deflection on that machine, know that, you know, if they measure a tool, when they go to touch that tool on the workpiece, it's going to cut that actual size, because, you know, lesser machines will not cut in the same position in which you measure.
But I find this interesting because where you're talking there is from a machinist perspective. He's got a part he needs to deliver to tolerance and he might have problems. Commercially, James, does the owner of the company take things like that into consideration, or do they look at that as a shop floor problem and think, well, this is just going to cost me a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds, which most machine tools of this sophistication and technology are. You know, it's too much for me. I can do that job somewhere else, when clearly probably not as well. But is he thinking in the same way? And if he isn't, or if he is, how do you demonstrate how good this could be for him commercially?
I think two things. You spoke earlier about manufacturers and helping manufacturers. MTD have done that, and I think it's important that DMG MORI do that as well. You know, if all that a salesman does is drop a quotation on a customer's desk, then there'll be a high price point, and the customer quite rightly would question, why should he spend that money? It's very much my role to help the customer understand. Steve used the word vision. We have one customer that invested in one of these machines. He ran that machine. When they closed on a Friday lunchtime, he pressed the start button. When he came in Monday morning, he'd earned enough money over the weekend, lights out, because of the number of tools in the carousel, because of the anti-vibration measures that DMG MORI have taken, that he produced a week's worth of production, which covered the machine's weekly cost over a weekend. That then gave him capacity to sell on more complex 5-axis work Monday through Thursday.
And is this hard for you to, when you go and speak to customers, do they sometimes need to experience this themselves to go, oh, do you know what? Now I need number 2 and now I need number 3, and it's got to be that first one, isn't it? It's got to be those.
The first one generally takes some time, but I pride myself on what we've been able to achieve here in the UK and with my colleagues across Europe and in America, whereby we've actually helped an education process. We've helped the customer understand that it's not just the headline price. It's sitting down, it's understanding roughly what the machine's going to generate, how much money that can make the company, take away the monthly payments, which on this machine wouldn't need to start until 6 months after the machine were installed, and actually give them a very basic cash flow, not a complicated return on investment, but simple housekeeping. On this job, if you make this, after you've paid for the machine, you will clear this much a month. And that's a positive message, not a headache.
There's kind of numbers you could probably assign to that as well, isn't there? You could probably say, well, you know, if you ran it for this many hours and charged this much per hour, your income could be X before you've even potentially had to lay out any money. And the experience you've gained in that period and the opportunity to win new business, win-win.
Yeah, I mean, on this machine, if you only ran it at maybe 60% of its potential, and dependent on charge-out rates, you could make easily anywhere between £200,000 and £300,000 in the first 6 months after the machine's installed, before you make your first repayment on the machine.
And the other beauty is really when you sell an NMV, and we've sold quite a few NMVs, is that, yes, Paul, you're quite right, the first machine it takes a little bit of time for us to convince the customer. But after, if he does decide to go for the machine, he receives the machine on his shop floor. Steve will bear me out on this, and I know James will. So very quickly, when you have an NMV, you suddenly realise in the first few months, Steve, don't you, what sort of a machine you have.
I think you're right, Paul. Particularly the entrepreneurial, subcontractor, the SMEs, they are acutely aware. The bosses are acutely aware of what the issues are on the shop, and they transfer that into a financial calculation. And this is where James comes in, because he's able to reverse that back for them and look at it a different way, with the support of Kevin giving the technical element, or anybody else in the team, in fact, here giving the technical element. So yes, people are aware of it, certainly.
But what would be the risk to someone? And I know it might be quite obvious. Okay, the risk is that they've got a machine and they've got no work for it, and where do they go next? And that might be seen as a big risk, and it is the only risk really that stops people doing it, isn't it?
Yes.
How
do you mitigate that risk?
Well, very few people would buy a machine today on a speculative situation. So I'm going to buy that machine because I know that out in the marketplace the work is there, and it is there. There is lots of work there. Is it the right work for them? Is it the right price for them? So I don't think many people would do that. But what they do is they've got ongoing contracts. More and more people are going into LTAs, long-term agreements with companies. And we have got to be in a position to support them. So 2 in stock, 2 more coming behind, 2 more coming behind. So we've got a flow of NMVs coming through to make sure that we're available on a relatively short delivery should those people make those decisions.
Okay, I'm just going to reiterate, we're talking about a 5-axis machine in sense here with a 34 pallet station, all manner of options, high-speed spindle, very, very high levels of technology, which Kevin will continue to touch on throughout this. One of the things I was going to suggest is there a way? I'm always trying to look at things pragmatically. Could you have 3 or 4 5-axis machines? Have you done the number on this? Whether it's you, James, Kevin, or Steve, where you go, okay, well, if you took out 3 of those verticals and you're doing that work on that one, and you're doing that work on that one and that on that, 2 5-axis, take them all out. We'll part exchange and we'll give you a number for that. You put this one in. This will do the same amount of work than those will. Because to me, if I was running a machine shop, I would need someone to come in and go, do you know what, we'll move those 3 verticals, we'll take that 5-axis out, we'll pull that horizontal out, that job can be done in 6 minutes on here, that one in 7, these are the things we need on the machine, and there you go.
Paul, if you ever get fed up doing what you're doing, come and work with me, because you've just done a financial justification, and that's what we do, we build the case.
Yeah,
absolutely spot on.
And our business managers will happily sit with any customer and go through that process. Like everything, you've got to have a 2-way situation. We can't go in and say, look at this, what we've got. It's the best thing since sliced bread. It's maybe not. It may be that there's something else that the customer needs or requires or desires. And but our business managers will be able to go through that. And we've done that many times on many different products across the range. To look at the justification of going the numbers with James.
Because I just think that is the biggest challenge. People can see and they can look at the machine, and I want to talk to you about Japan in a minute, but they can see where it's built, they can see the heritage behind the company. They know that they're replacing older machinery with new machinery means you've got warranties, you've got less chance of mechanical failure, you're developing you've got new control systems which are going to be more reliable and faster. So you've got all of these things, and they're easy to just say it's got this, it's got that, it's got that. But it's trying to get them to go, okay, and if we maybe change the way you do it, this could be perfect in a much smaller footprint as well. That's the
it is. And picking up on a point you made earlier about mitigating risk, Steve rightly said companies generally don't buy machines if they haven't got work to go on it. That would be commercial suicide. There may be an educated guess that, if we get this machine and we have this capacity, we're pretty sure we can fill it or we can put something on it. What does happen is customers' work changes. Now, speaking to Jay this morning, we have a customer with an NMV running some fairly simple parts. The work had changed from which they bought the machine for initially. Jay's taken 30% out of the cycle time just by going in. So it's not just the machine purchase today, it's not just the financing today and not paying for 6 months, it's the support that DMG MORI gives through the total life of the machine.
And we're going to have Jay on shortly, where we're going to look at, we're going to get his opinion from an applications engineer about how he feels about this machine, it's going into the field, what customers say about it and what they like about it. Steve, you were in Japan recently. Good fun, good trip, something
Fantastic.
you do regularly?
Well, we haven't been able to do, the trip was actually planned pre-COVID, and we were supposed to go in March of 2020 when COVID hit big time and the whole world was closed down. So we cancelled that trip and we re-established it a few weeks ago. We took a group of 20 people, customers, even customers that have been with us a long time, didn't realise the extent of some of our manufacturing facilities, how we were very much vertically integrated to control the price, the deliveries. And there is a big thing about deliveries at the moment, and one of the issues that we have is that not necessarily the parts to get hold of to build the machine and the controls, which there are shortages of, but the size of our order book is just growing beyond all means. And the company's been investing for many years to manage that growing order book, but I think that we've been kind of a victim of our own success. In the UK, we've been very successful throughout COVID. We went into COVID with a big order book. That kept us going, obviously financially and from an engineering point of view. And as we've come out of COVID, the investment has been frantic, to be honest with you. And sometimes we can't get the deliveries that we want. But DMG MORI has had great success throughout the whole world. And that tells you something about the product. It tells you where the product fits, particularly in automation. So when we was in Japan, one of the factories, which is Nara, which was the original factory for the Morisiki product, which was actually converted to manufacture our small, lightweight turning machines and machining centres, as they've all been transferred across to Iga plant now, which is now the largest machine tool building in Japan and probably in the world, I suspect. And that plant at Nara has been handed over to what's called a solution centre, and it deals with automation. So when we went round there were 7 or 8 lathes linked with a gantry loader, there were a number of turn mill centres linked with gantry loaders, there were robotics, there was a handling of a long shaft project, some really nice stuff. Some of the stuff was confidential, we couldn't see, but you can imagine the size of that factory as was, that we're building 500-600 machines a month, has now been turned over to this solution centre which deals with the automation. That's a huge commitment from DMG
And is that
MORI.
the type of volume that they are building and more?
More, yeah. The volume is very high. The level of sophistication is higher. The automation is getting higher and higher in all sorts of countries. Even countries that have got low labour costs are investing heavily in automation because there is nothing that beats zero labour cost.
And I totally agree, and I'm sure it's a fascinating week for your customers. In a short, truncated amount of time, if you can, just tell people that have never experienced one of these kind of factory tours what the agenda's like. Because I'm always fascinated, but they're pretty hard work, aren't they?
It's hard work. We fly out on a Saturday. You arrive Sunday morning. We do a little bit of time adjusting with a little bit of sightseeing. There's a bit of dinner on the Sunday night, and then we start on Monday. We go into the technical centre in Tokyo. We then move on to the Nara campus. We move on to the Iga campus, and we're getting tours of the factories. In the factories, particularly the Iga one, we've got, as we talk about the vertical integration, we've got our own machining facilities, our own heat treatment, our own foundries. Our grinding, our ball screw grinding and assembly areas, machine assembly areas. You're taken around on a mini bus to section to section. So it's a big area and it's really full on. And what's also important for me actually is for people to immerse themselves in the culture of Japan. And I've been there many, many times and I'm still struggling with it. to be honest, it's a very, very different way of life to what we have in the Western world. And it's very interesting for our customers to understand, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you built it this way. That's interesting. Could I implement that here? So there's a lot of thought that goes into what they do. And the group, this time, I've never seen a group gel so well. And we had a mixture of OEMs and subcontractors. And they were cross-fertilising ideas. They're now actually 2 or 3 of them doing work amongst each other. And it's fabulous to see that in our sort of effort that we made for them. But yeah, I think a 3 or 4 day recovery plan was...
I was going to say, it sounds like business here. You slept well, I assume.
The following week, yeah. Not during the week.
Kevin, with the Japanese factor on these machines, you've mentioned some of the elements that are built into these that give you that kind of real precision, don't they? Precision on day one's one thing, but it needs to last. And yes. I think the challenges, this was where I'll probably come on to one of our final points here, is about the challenges that people face with the unmanned running and how these machines solve that. The enemy is always vibration. We mentioned that before. It comes up a lot. Just tell us some of those challenges that people may be worried about or may face that you go, actually, no, they're quite easy to overcome because we do it this way and we do it that way. Is the things you could maybe pick out for us?
Okay, there's a few. This particular machine is what we call a DCG machine. So the table or the bridge of the machine is driven by a ball screw on both sides. Ball screws are directly driven by the motors, and the ball screws themselves are actually core cooled. So what's that mean for a customer? Well, it basically means that as the machine's working in a factory, probably over a weekend, they might not have the heating on. So the whole machine is keeping the same temperature, and it's not expanding or contracting too much. So that all adds to...
Well, the point you make about the twin ball screws,
yes,
you wouldn't have a car driven by the 2 left wheels, would you, I suppose? It's a little bit similar. You'd have it all...
The thing we like to do, but you could do it more if you've got a table in front, is just take a cardboard box, place it on the table, and then push it from the right-hand end or the left-hand end or the centre. And it's difficult to steer the box and keep it straight, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you put your 2 fingers on the outer corners and then push, you get beautiful motion, straight motion. And that's exactly what you get on the surface of the part.
Yeah. Okay, so with things like the twin ball screw, the octagonal ram, this bridge-style construction that you have, mean that the environment that you have for holding and machining the part is as true and as geometrically best and as solid and as precise as you believe you can get with a 5-axis machine.
You're not getting vibration from any drivetrain as well. And more the point I'm bringing to here is the C-axis, which is the rotary table, as you're probably aware, and the B-axis, which is the tilted. Now, both of those on a lot of machines, depending on how much money you're spending on a machine, might be worm wheel drive or some mechanical drive, or you get vibrations coming through. The NMV is direct drive. There's no gears on any of the drive systems of that. The C-axis is temperature controlled, the B-axis is temperature controlled, the spindle is temperature controlled, the ball screw is temperature controlled. And if you get control of your temperature, your expansion and contraction is under control again, less wear. So you're investing...
Maintenance, long-term, longevity.
All of that.
Yeah. And all this rigidity, Kevin, is adding up to a reduction of costing on tooling, isn't it? Because your tool life will definitely be better.
We've seen...
We've proven that technology.
We have, yeah.
And in a few seconds, Jay's going to be coming up, and this is his favourite DMG Mori machine, and I'm sure he's going to give us the reasons behind that.
It's my favourite as well.
It's your favourite.
It's my favourite. We talk about this, Paul, just briefly. DMG Mori are 5-axis champions. There's no doubt about that at all. And we can challenge anybody, because if you look at the width of our product range within the 5-axis, whether it be on mill turn or turn mill, it's phenomenal. The experience we have with 5-axis is phenomenal, and from different parts of the world as well, to all integrate that intellectual property into the development of machine tools. This one, the NMV 3000, and we of course do a 5000 and an 8000, surpasses all our 5-axis. It is the best machine in our portfolio.
that's a very, very good statement there, Steve.
I hope Dr. Mori listens to that as well.
Just before we're coming up, and Jay's going to give us a quick overview of hands-on on the machine. The pallet system, we haven't gone into great detail about. We've said it's got 34 pallets, but we haven't spoken about the work holding, the ease of use, and the getting into. We'll touch on that with Jay. James, before you depart us, because I know your phone's been ringing and there's probably deals to do. You mentioned to me earlier about when you do go and see customers that have purchased these machines, and you hear about other deals that have been done for maybe competitors' machines. The fact that this is one solution, everything's integrated. There's no arguments, there's no hassle. You kind of find there's no one chasing someone for this. It was a big part for you earlier, you mentioned.
Yeah, hugely. Automation is a step forward that everybody needs to embrace. Companies with vision have done so. We have our own automation, which can bolt alongside. Sometimes customers decide to purchase from a third-party supplier, which is fine, until there's a problem. And then what generally happens is someone looks right, the other person looks left and says it's your problem. And the customer's left not getting the production that he needs, and the machine sat there whilst these issues are sorted. I'm a firm believer that with integrated automation, direct from the manufacturer, you really do have a one-stop solution.
Brilliant. And James, for people that want to contact you, quite easy to get hold of if they're interested in talking about how they can be flexible.
No problem at all. Get me through here.
Yeah, cool. We'll put your details on the channels that we're watching this. When we come back, I'm going to speak to Jay now, and we're going to get a real hands-on overview of the NMV 3000 and the pallet system. When we come back, Charley Lucas is also going to join us from DMG Mori. But as for now, I'm going to go and speak to Jay. Thank you, James. So I'm now with Jay Heighton, who's an applications engineer here at DMG Mori. Jay, what I want to try and get out of this is just to find out what you think about this machine yourself, and then also, because you're travelling up and down the country seeing and working on installations of the NMV machine, what you're hearing from customers and what you think their perception is, because you're boots on ground really, aren't you? So what would you firstly say about this particular model? What do you like about it?
Best kept secret. The best machine, personally, I think DMG Mori make.
And what would be the reasons for that, though? Is it
ease of use, accessibility, accuracy?
And that access and ease of use is an important one, and probably something we wouldn't have touched on the sofas throughout this podcast, because it's hard to see, isn't it? But now I'm standing by the machine, you can see that. I suppose you can walk straight up to the part, setting components, measuring components if you needed to.
You're also 2 steps left and 2 steps right from tool changer to AWC. So everything is within a couple of steps around you. You can get inside the machine. You can see with the ceiling back where you can get absolutely access to every part.
Okay. When you talk about accuracy, as your role, what do you do? Do customers give you an application and you have to go away and design it, create it, machine it, deliver it?
Generally, if it's a machine sale, machine will be installed. We can either provide just training on the machine, or we can go into a full project where we can program, we can set, we can operate, and we can obviously automate for the system. So for lights out machining, building into sister tooling. And
you would do that yourself? Is that your expertise? So you can look at a part and you can go, that's perfect for the NMV, and you can use some of the things that you know about this machine to push it to its extremes to make that part quicker.
Definitely, yeah. Obviously everything depends on the application, but generally it's always around the customer's part, but we can just assist and help. It's always nice to work with the customer rather than just doing it out and out ourselves. It gives them a hands-on effect, and it gives them an understanding of what the machine's like as well.
And by you saying you believe that for you this is the best machine in the DMG Mori portfolio on a 5-axis, why do you think that is? And you mention accessibility and you mention performance and precision, but do you feel comfortable? Is it about a comfort factor of pushing this thing to its limits? It really is a real metal removal machine.
Yeah, ease of use in it just doesn't stop. Once it's set up, it just goes and goes and goes. It is just a solid machine. Everything is compact, it's rigid, and that just proves in the accuracy of the parts that people are producing as well.
What about the pallet system itself? 34 pallets, but easy to load, easy to set, easy to bring them up. What about if there's an issue on one part and you need to go to another part? How does that all work?
It sounds silly. It's as easy as an Excel spreadsheet. It's just a click of a button. You call, you load, you press ready. The machine does everything else for you. It is that easy to use.
And what if I was running unmanned and there was an issue on pallet 6 and I was running on pallet 6 and, would it automatically take that pallet out and put another one in? How does the ongoing programming work?
It depends how far and how deep you want to go into it. You can have a pallet eject on an error, and then you can call in a secondary job, or you can call if it's the same job on the same pallet. There's a lot of things you can do. You can interrogate tool life. If tool life's expired, you can call up a sister tool, or if the machine also can calculate whether there's enough life in that specific tool to do that pallet. If not, it can select another tool. I've even actually set up a system for a customer where the system will work as much as it can producing the components on the pallet. So even if the last tool was to break on one pallet, the next pallet would come in and it would run up to that tool until everything had exhausted. So they would only then have to come in and work on the pallets that needed the additional tools on.
Okay, interesting. Things that people face as potential issues with unmanned running. What about swarf on this machine? Is there a way, and do you add things into programs to make sure you
can? Obviously, the easiest way is all the chip flushing that comes with the machine. You can rotate the B axis, you can spin around the C axis. There's lots of different ways to eject swarf.
Is it air blasts? Can you blast using the coolant?
Yeah.
And these things you can pre-program in, so you can say when we get to point X in the program, let's stop, let's blast. And
absolutely. Yeah, a really common one is obviously wash down at the end, spin the B axis, tilt that, and get rid of all of the swarf residing on the pallets.
Loading in through the top. You mentioned accessibility. Do people make? And I know you'd use this mainly as a pallet system, but it does allow you to be able to use this as a part to just do one part.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, maximum diameter 350 mil. Maximum height 100 kilo payload. You can retract the ceiling, and you can get directly a crane over the top of the centre line of the pallet for ease of loading. And
you wouldn't have any concern having such a weight on such a small diameter table?
No, not at all.
And is that because of the way it's secured to this frame?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the fact that it's just so rigid.
Control systems. We've now got the new Celos control on here. And there's a lot of app bases on here to help it make you easy to program. But there'd be an argument to suggest if this thing's just running unmanned, okay, it's good to have a new software, but a lot of it is the only thing you should be doing is loading and taking putting your parts in and taking your parts out.
Well, that's my opinion of it.
Right.
Yeah, everyone will say the apps. You can do this or you can do that, but in my opinion, you don't stand at the control on this machine. You stand at the workset station and you just feed it material and it'll eat it.
What are your customers saying to you? You've been on many sites where these have gone in. What's their sort of, when you go in on day 2 and day 3 of the machine running, you just know you're going to walk into a happy environment?
Well, the one that I've always noticed with NMV customers is there's not many that only have one. They normally tend to have 3 or 5.
What do you think their most favourite thing is about the machine? If you had to say the thing you hear more commonly from customers about the NMV range is?
Productivity. Bar none, that it doesn't stop.
So as I've said throughout this podcast, if you want to see this machine in action and look at some of the things that I've just spoken about with Jay as well, you can come here to DMG Mori in Coventry, their headquarters, and see this machine in action. But you'll probably need to be quick. This machine behind us is in stock, but I know there's a lot of interest for it at the moment. There is also a second machine available from stock. And of course, everybody here at DMG Mori will be more than happy to talk to you about how they can show you and demonstrate that this could be the machine for you. So for now, we're joined by Charley, who's replaced James. Charley, how are you doing?
Hi there, good, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself and what you do at DMG Mori to our listeners and those that are viewing on
yeah,
YouTube.
Sure. So my role is marketing assistant. I look after all the social media channels and the events that we do. So we plan those, any overseas events in-house, any of the supply events that we hold, I plan those and run those. And then I also try and look after the sales guys a little bit.
Is that easy? Is that the hardest bit of the job? Or the easiest?
Yeah, over the past 5 years, it's got a lot easier, that's for sure.
Steve, is that easy for you or harder?
No, that makes life a lot easier for me, actually, because there's a buffer now. But I think what I'd also like to add to what Charlie does, social media, which is a huge thing these days. And for old fogies like me, it's sometimes difficult to grab hold of. But Charlie's generation, it's quite easy. And, of course, people do watch this kind of activity. They on the phone, as at a bus stop or at the traffic lights when they shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. But what Charlie's also done is work with quite a number of our customers to give them exposure within the social media spectrum that we have, which is quite large as well. So it's not just about, Charlie looking after the interests of DMG Mori. She's also been really good. And you visited a number of customers recently where you've gone in, listened to what their problems were, and then made some suggestions about how they could move forward with their marketing and actually make them, more proactive in the marketplace.
It's really important for them, isn't it, though? I mean, Charlie, you see that. We go in, as I've said already, lots and lots of factories every day of the week. And the things they're good at is making parts.
Yeah.
But they're not good at really telling people that they're making good parts.
Yeah.
And some companies you go in and you go, I wouldn't have even known this company either existed. I certainly wouldn't know what they're making. And then you might go and try and find their website and they haven't got one. And then you try and tag them in on a social media post and they're not on that either. And you kind of think, well, they've done this well so far like this, but is that sustainable these days without being, social, without being able to communicate those messages? Because I'm rambling a bit here, but I always think that people nowadays, they are making a lot of their decisions, whether it be people buying machine tools, people changing tooling providers, people subbing out work. They're making a lot of that decision prior to even picking up the phone and communicating, aren't they? So if you're not on, I don't even know where my phone is, but if you're not on it, you're not going to win it, are you? Would you?
Yeah, of course. I completely agree. It's what I do. It's what I'm trained in. But I think the biggest thing for me is the basic level of social media is completely free. So I don't know why people wouldn't utilise that. And you can use it on a personal level, you can use it on a business level, and it's so quick, it's so easy, and it is, at the end of the day, it's free marketing. You can obviously utilise the more expensive and paid parts of it, but for small companies, even for big companies, you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds to use a social media platform. Everyone has their phones, like you said, everyone has a phone in their pocket. It doesn't have to be the latest technology, it can be any sort of phone. Make a short video, take a quick photo, and just post it on your social media channels. And the more you do that, the more followers you get, the more outreach you get. And like you said, most people do make those decisions before they've picked up the phone. And that's the best thing about social media and the internet. We don't have to always talk to someone. Of course, the best thing is talking to people. That human interaction is still necessary. But having that first line of, let's see who's out there or what's out there, it's just so quick. It's
quick, it's easy, it's simple. And this brings me on to a point now, which in relation to that, your software, your control systems, it's much broader than what we talk about. It's maintenance, it's communicating with your department here in service. Life's got easier to communicate, hasn't it? And I mean, Kevin, you obviously talking to engineers about these machines and solutions, and if they do have issues and need support, and it can all be diagnosed remotely, and it can all be potentially solved remotely, can it?
Yes, it can. I mean, I can't remember how many years, but at least 5 years now, every DMG Mori machine has been fitted with my DMG Mori. So basically connectivity to the machine, and that connection to the machine can be used by service, could be used by applications. We cannot initiate a connection to your machine. We cannot get access to your machine without you requesting it and enabling it. But it's there as standard on DMG Mori machines, because we feel that you need that connectivity. That's the way the world's going to work. The control on the machine is now Salos control, and on the NMV we might add, and it's all that touch, pinch, move, which we're all familiar with on the iPhone. All of that technology here on the machine.
Yeah.
So we had a case in point last week in Aberdeen with a customer. Linked up with his machine, networked the machine, looked at it and went, slight programming error here. Not what the customer's fault, but we actually just showed him a better way of doing it. And that was our experts in the office in here in Coventry. I mean, that saved a 2-day trip, and it was over and done with very, very quickly. And of course, that kind of support is absolutely critical. That's a free of charge support, that is. So even you can stand by the machine, press the button that said, I need help, and it comes through to our service or our applications department, whichever one you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the cost that you save, the customer saves. It's that time, isn't it? It's that precious time that you cannot afford to be down for 24, 40, 36, 48 hours. It's critical, and it's so good to be able to talk about these machines running unmanned, but if there are issues, they can be rectified and solved quickly. I really, really enjoyed today's podcast. I think it's been educational for me from all elements, and I've actually, as I speak, I often think of more things that I've learned throughout it. Kevin, we have talked about the technology on the machine and why, if someone is looking at an unmanned running solution, the DMG MORI or the NMV machine fits perfectly. What would be your final few words that you would say to the UK market when you're travelling around, why they should consider automation, unmanned running, lights out running, and more importantly, the NMV model?
Yeah, for me, you should consider a company that has the range of products that could suit your requirements, has the engineers in the way the business managers that can sit and listen to your requirements, has the technology to support you digitally and physically. And yeah, they're just some of the points I can think of off the top of my head.
And yourself, Steve?
Well, as I go back to the automation, it's critical that UK manufacturing remains or becomes competitive. And that is an important thing with the NMV. It gives you that competitive edge to really face not just your competitor from one county to another, but from the other side of the world to another. And this is really what this machine is all about.
And if people want to get to Japan with you next time, how do they go about that one?
Just give me a PO for this.
Kevin, you've got...
There's another point that's
it's called bribery and corruption. No, we select the customers very carefully on, is it the right visit for them? Obviously, we do it much more of a thank you to what people have done. And they're all good customers, but they're all different range of customers as well. And I think it's important to get a different range of people together, because if you get people that are all the same, you don't get a very good conversation.
And there's a criteria. You need to be able to go with a few hours sleep.
Yeah, well, you can have 4 hours sleep a night. That's enough, yeah. That's
that rules a lot out. Kevin, you want to make a point?
There's one other thing that's come to my mind because of a project I'm particularly working on at the moment, whose name must remain anonymous, but very few people realise that we also offer the facility of DMG MORI Digital. What's that all about? Delivering post-processors for your machine as well. So not only, it's the full picture here now. We're our own automation that's integrated to the machine, work holding tooling we can support you with, but also the delivery of a post-processor that will work first time and be safe.
And we just supplied, well, not just, but we recently supplied one to a Formula One team who's a technical partner with us. I won't mention the name, but I guess you know who that is. And they are in a very harsh environment from a point of view of a variety of components. They said, well, you've done the work, Kevin, haven't you?
Yeah.
Best source of post-processor they've ever had. Which is
good to hear.
Not an easy thing to do.
No, it's very difficult.
Not an easy thing to do, yeah.
It's the whole package. Charlie, we'll end with you. What's this company like to work for and these guys like to work with?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, it's never a dull moment.
Shall we end on a high?
It's never a dull moment, but I think as we've been speaking about different things and how this year's gone, looking forward to next year. There's so many different events coming up. We've got Fronton at the beginning. I think anyone that's looking at possibly buying one of our machines, wanting to get to know us as a business, should definitely speak to our sales guys, and they'll put you on to me, and we can sort about coming over to Fronton with us in February. And I think you'll get a feel for us as a company, especially as DMG MORI UK, and then the wider company as well. But yeah.
Good stuff.
Can I just mention as well, Japan is a very special trip because of the location, basically, and the effort that it takes for people to get there, because it's a long journey. But we also take regular trips to factories throughout Europe. So Charlie just mentioned Fronton, which is normally at the beginning of the year. We'd like to go to Sabac. We're going to go to Famot, which you've been to in Poland, which is we've invested very heavily there with our own products for being vertically integrated, and is very much controlled digitally. We are arranging a trip next week to our showroom in Stuttgart in Germany, which has got 12 or 14 products in there that we want to show customers, so we're arranging that. So we're always arranging trips to show machines to customers and let them see the value of really what it's all about.
And I think that really is, that really is the way. I think in our industry, people buy into not just the product but the company, don't they? And that it's a whole package.
Yeah.
Guys, it's been a real pleasure hosting this podcast today. If you've been listening or watching, of course, please feel free to make a comment and we'll get back to you. If you're interested in any of the DMG MORI products that you'll find across our channel, then of course you can contact them via us or contact them directly. But I suppose more importantly, if you're interested in knowing more about the NMV range, the NMV 3000 that's behind us, this 5-axis machine with 34 pallets, it's available from stock as we sit here and speak. There is 2 machines. Talk to the guys at DMG MORI, and thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.